Hello everyone, it's Ashwin Rao. In today's video, I'm bringing you a couple pair of vintage shoes from classic American makers of both years gone by and present. One brand remains relevant while the other has faded into the quagmire of brand names that no longer hold the value that they once did. And yet both of these are shoes, when you take a look at their heritage, really bring back the grandeur of what it means to be American-made footwear. As you might have guessed, the brand that is currently still relevant has the shoe tree that suggests that it is a current brand, and that's Alden. It is very well regarded amongst shoe circles for its adherence to quality craftsmanship and makeups. While in recent years, it's probably faded a little bit in terms of the quality of construction, the materials that go into Alden shoes, it still does very much hold a place in heritage footwear amongst modern enthusiasts. So the other brand, the one that has faded into the quagmire of recycled name brands that used to carry true value, but once were great in their own accord, is Florsheim. This here is potentially the most classic of American footwear models, and that's the longwing blucher in a vintage Color 8 Shell Cordovan from the Horween Tannery. I've had this shoe resold by Wyatt and Dad Cobblers to add a more modern take on the sole and a contrasting rubber compared to the traditional black edge dressing with a leather sole with the V cleat. I wanted something a little bit more updated, so we created this shoe, but it is a modern reinterpretation of a classic, and the leather itself is from the 1950s. What I've done is really tried to restore these leathers using pure polish products, specifically their Shell Cordovan cream and this plum paste wax polish. I also typically use a high shine polish for the tips of the shoes, particularly the front where the medallion is on these pairs, as well as to the back heels where the counters and the backs of the quarters meet, to add a layer of protection, because that's an area that gets a lot of friction, a lot of contact from shoe to shoe or from shoe to environment. And I wanted to just tell you that Pure Polish Products, again, I have no affiliation with the brand other than being a real fan. And occasionally Andy boots me over new products to test out. That's actually the case with the plum wax polish that I have here. But overall, I really wanted to take you through why I think these two models are iconic and present them in a manner that shows how iconic that these brands and these makeups can be. So this model from Alden, if you don't already know, is their leisure hand-sewn penny loafer. The penny loafer named because it's a loafer, meaning it's a slip-on, and this slot here used to and can still carry a penny slid into that slot right there. So it has that particular heritage style. Now this is a model that continues to be made by Alden to this day. It has a hand-sewn apron. This is not a pie crust apron, but rather just a standard hand-sewn apron where this is all one piece of leather that's slightly raised and then stitched, which is classic of many of Alden's makeups. Color 8 used to be a more deep burgundy color that similar to what you're seeing here. The current versions of Color 8 are almost to the degree of being black. And so vintage Color 8 Shell benefits from two things. One, it benefits from a slightly different color concentration would be the best way I think I would put it. I think the formulation is pretty much the same, as well as fading that has maybe occurred over the years from exposure to sunlight. Darker Shell Cordovans tend to fade to a lighter color, and there are actually people who are really enthusiastic about fading Shell Cordovan. And so this particular color is a really rich, deep burgundy color that I've now repolished and restored using the Pure Polish Products colors, with the plum adding a slight pigment if needed to kind of cover up some of the areas where that pigment may have slightly diminished, and then restored accordingly and rehydrated. So Shell Cordovan is amazing in that you can continue to care for it. Usually just needs a bit of brushing, but every now and again needs a treatment to restore its high shine and protect it, and it will last you well longer than your own life. This pair being probably about 30 to 40 years old, and this pair being 60 or so years old. Florsheim, the iconic longwing blucher. I've become more and more fond of this style because it really brings to mind the heritage of American heritage footwear. It is a truly iconic and classic design, and I think Florsheim honestly does it best. I like this particular style better than the longwing blucher that Alden does, better than the longwing bluchers that, say, modern interpretations such as Carmina make, better than many of the others such as Allen Edmonds, Hanover, that are out there, partly because the design is very clean, it's very balanced, the fit is really nice. There is largely less pieces of leather used to make up. There's no split seam here, which you see in some of the models. And again, this vintage pair, be it through fading or through a slightly different color saturation on tannage, is a little lighter. And I like that lightness. When I first got this pair, it was almost a mid-brown. And then once I rehydrated it, it regained some of its color. And I was surprised how just using the Shell Cordovan cream, this product right here, brought back that burgundy. Now, this is really a cream that has no pigment. If I show you this Shell Cordovan cream and unscrew it, you'll see it has no color. But just on hydrating leathers, sometimes including Cordovan leathers, you can go from a mid-brown to a deeper burgundy color. And then I used a plum polish to, again, slightly recolorize the tip of the shoe once I had applied some high shine polish, as well as polish to the back heel quarters and counter right there. How well this leather takes these pure polish products and how lustrous this beautiful color really is. So how do you go about getting these shoes? Well, it's not that hard. Pop on eBay and you'll find about 1 billion of these models. Shell Cordovan longwing bluchers were kind of a dime a dozen. You can get these for $100, maybe $200 in really good shape, or higher if you get them in pristine or new old stock condition. And the penny loafer, particularly this leisure hand sewn penny loafer, are slightly harder to come by on the used market because Alden still carries its modern, this shoe in its modern lineup. It still seems to be swept up and caught up more in enthusiasts' attentions. And so these can go for $200 or $300, sometimes a little bit more. But a new pair of leisure hand-sewn loafers will run you about $800 or $900. A new pair of Shell Cordovan longwing bluchers from, say, Alden or another's, similar price. But you can go get yourself a vintage pair, use some shoe care products of your choice, do a lot of elbow grease work to really shine these back up and restore them. Use your ebony stick, which I also use to smooth out some of the rolls in these shoes. If you desire, you can always get a great cobbler such as Y and Dad to replace a sole, and whammo bammo, these shoes take on another life. When you look for vintage Shell Cordovan, make sure that you find pairs that don't actually have any deep cracks in them or separation, because those will often compromise the integrity of that leather. If you find a pair that looks fairly scuffed up but no actual cracks or breaks on the surface, then you're really going to be lucky, because you can do a lot of rehydration and basically bring them back to life so that they look really quite close to new. Give vintage shoes a try. What is old is now new again. Heritage style seems to be in fashion these days, but these are shoes that will never go out of style and will always stay relevant. Think about vintage Shell Cordovan, and think about vintage Florsheim, think about vintage Alden, or any number of vintage pairs. And if you look for their Shell Cordovan models, use pure polish products or similar high quality products, Paul Brungard, Saphir. Those are the types of products that will bring you back the life of these vintage shoes. Hope you enjoyed this little soliloquy and a take down memory lane for your vintage shoes. Maybe it'll get you inspired to go hunting for a pair that's in your size. Happy hunting, y'all. Take care. Good night.